All right. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the meeting for the Macomb County Apportionment Commission. It's now 9:03. I'd like to have a roll call vote. Who's here? I would also like to ask, I'm going to have the deputy clerk go through the roll call and also the motions so that we can keep some forward activity going here. So if the deputy clerk can please take the roll.
Please respond by saying present or
If you
here.
could, you got to turn the mic on.
Please respond by saying present or here. Anthony Borlini, Macomb County Clerk.
Here.
Larry Rocca, Macomb County Treasurer.
Present.
Peter Lucina, Macomb County Prosecutor.
Here.
Ed Rulli, Macomb County Democratic Party.
Here.
Mark Horton, Macomb County Republican Party Chair.
Here.
I saw that.
Thank you. I'd like to move for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Larry Rocca, seconded by Mark Horton. Clerk, please take your roll.
I'm sorry, did you want me to make roll
Deputy
call?
clerk. Nope, just, I'm sorry. Any discussion? I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Is that better?
I'm sorry.
Just all in favor for the approval of the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you. We'll now move to public participation. Members of the public may speak for 3 minutes. If you wish to speak, please come up to the podium and state your name. Anybody? All right. We hear nobody speaking, so we'll move forward. We are moving to the, I apologize, approval for the minutes from the July 28th Apportionment Commission meeting.
Move to approve the minutes as presented. Second.
Motion approved by Mr. Rocca, supported by Mr. Lucina.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, you need to ask for the no votes also.
Any nays? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion of the state apportionment tool. We're going to have a discussion by Dave Tarrant from the Michigan Bureau of Elections. And I'd like to, I think, Mike Ricks has got Dave on the phone.
Yep, you should be all set. Dave, can you hear us?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay.
Yeah, so my name is David Tarrant. I'm with the Bureau of Elections. I have Nicholas with me as well, and Tony and Mike wanted me to kind of give you guys just kind of an overview of an apportionment tool that the state put together that we're providing to counties to do the apportionment work this go around. So I'm going to go through some slides here, and then after I'm done, Nicholas will kind of give you kind of a live demo of the tool that you can kind of see the functionality of it, and then if you have questions or whatever at the end, we can go ahead and have you ask those at the end. So just a little background on the tool. The Secretary of State is required to provide the latest census data to the county apportionment commissions for them to actually do the apportionment work. So we thought doing a tool would kind of be kind of an easy to use interface that would both provide the data to the counties as well as give them kind of a tool to actually do the apportionment work and would have checks in it to make sure that certain things are validated in the plans, as well as the ability to produce a final report, which I'll show you some details on that. The tool is optional. Counties do not have to use it. It is provided if they want to use it, but again, it is optional. As far as timeline, this go around was a little bit different than past cycles with 2 releases of data. There was an August 12th legacy data release and there will be one that's tentatively scheduled for September 30th, which will be the same data, but just in a more easy-to-use user format. And it is the Department of State's position that the 60-day window for apportionment will kind of begin with that September release. Obviously, it was released yesterday into production. And again, nothing prevents counties from getting started right now, either getting the data from the Census website in the link we provided, or by using the tool to get started with your apportionment work. Everybody who uses the tool will need a My Login from third-party account. It's a free account that accesses state applications. Some people might already have one for other applications, but it is a free account. Once you get that account, if you search for either CCD apportionment or search the agency as Michigan Secretary of State, you'll see the CCD apportionment app in there, and you can get access to that application in there. Kind of covered a lot of these. Third party is needed. We also need from the county, if you choose to use the tool, we need a signed MOA document, which basically just goes through and lays out the responsibilities for the county, especially the county admin, and their ability to approve or deny users and give them the access level that they need to have in the tool. So we would need the county to tell us who they want to serve as that county admin, to give us information for that county admin and sign the MOA, and then we can get you access to the tool to get going. As far as permissions, the county admin, again, is responsible for approving users to the tool and assigning their roles and permissions. There's the county admin role. There's an editor role, which will allow you to create and edit a plan. And then there's kind of a viewer only, which just gives you the ability to view plans, but you can't make any changes to plans. You could have multiple plans for your county. I say in here all county users can see all plans. I'll get to a plan security slide here in a minute that will go into a little more detail with that. But plans can be checked out for editing, and while they are checked out, only the person who has it checked out can see the plan. Others can see there is a plan, but there's a message that says it's checked out, and again, only the county admin or a state admin would be able to see the plans. You can provide a plan description. It's not required, but give just a little narrative about the plan you're doing. Plans can be added, modified, copied, renamed, deleted. They're not versioned, but basically you can copy a plan at a certain point and make changes to it, keeping that original plan intact. This is the slide I was talking about as far as the plan security or privacy, that while a plan is checked out, only the user that checked it out can see the plan. And then again, other people can see, other users, county users can see that there is a plan and that it's checked out, but they can't see any details, they can't run any reports on that plan. And the plan is checked out until that user chooses to check it back in. And then at that point, it would be visible to others, once it's checked back in. Validation, plans are automatically validated in real time, but you can also hit a button to do a validation. Some of the validation stuff is basically all census blocks need to be assigned to a district. If you don't do that, it will tell you which ones still remain, for you to assign those. The population tolerance needs to be less than 11.99%, and it will give you kind of a little indicator in there as far as if your plan is kind of meeting that. All districts should be contiguous. If there's annexations and 425s causing islands and stuff like that, it'll warn it just gives you a score. A score closer to 1 indicates a more compact district, and there's 2 algorithms, the Popper and the Schwartzberg, and it kind of gives you kind of a running total of that for the plan as well as for each district as you're going through the plan. Reporting, after you get through the validation, the reporting kind of consists of district descriptions, which are, whole jurisdictions, whole precincts, DTDs. You can also provide like a county provided legal description, like if you want to describe the roads that, or boundaries that make up that district, there's a place you can enter that in there as well. Data and demographics will give you total population, target, your deviation, variance, your compactness, and you can, there's an option to turn on demographic census, race demographic data for the districts. You can turn that on or off. And then we would provide maps for each district, a county map, and then a map kind of for each individual district as well. So the top here represents like what will come on the tool, like the city of Battle Creek, and then if it's split, it will say part, list the precincts that make up that. If that is split, it will list part, and it will say, basically there's a report that can be generated that shows you all the blocks. We didn't put all the blocks on there because it could make some of these reports rather long, but that is, you can get the block descriptions from a different report. But it would list, if it's whole jurisdictions, it would list all the jurisdictions on there. And then if you see the bottom part of the screen is that legal description where you can specify kind of that boundary that makes up the district that you created in kind of like a legal description terms. Data and demographics, this is kind of an example of what would come out. Each district would have the total population, the target, the variance as a percentage, and then the 2 Popper and Schwartzberg compactness scores would be on there as well. This is my contact information and Nicholas's contact information. If you have questions or whatever for us, definitely shoot us an email or give us a call and respond to those. Nicholas, I'm going to stop sharing. Do you want to bring up your screen to do the demo?
Sure, Dave.
So now Nicholas is going to share his screen for you to do a quick demo of the tool.
Dave, can you see the home screen?
Yes, I see the plans, reports, and admin.
Okay. Good morning, Home County. This is Nicholas from the Michigan Bureau of Elections. Many of you might know me from the Street Index. Dave and I are presenting the County Commissioner District Reapportionment Tool that the Bureau has developed. And this is a brief demonstration of some of the mapping capabilities of the tool. So once you go through the access procedures that Dave outlined before, users will hit this landing page. And depending on your role, whether you're an editor, reviewer, or a county admin, you'll see all or some of these menu options: plans, reports, admin. There's also a navigational panel up at the top. Most users are going to want to go right to plans and start adding blocks to districts, so that's what I'm going to show first. Click on the plans. Now, most users will have been assigned a county ahead of time. Because this is a development environment and I'm a state user, it shows the whole state, but most users would be zoomed in right to the county that they have been approved for. Map it on. Okay. So the tool zooms into an outline of the county, and momentarily here you'll see the census blocks display. And if you zoom in, you can see that inside each block is the block population total. Over on the left-hand side here, there's a plans panel, which which is the default view. You can also toggle between the plans view that lists the plans that are available or the map layers. So the map layers show various aspects of the map that can be toggled on or off. You can show an outline of the old county commissioner districts. Voter tabulations are the census approximation of precinct boundaries, school districts, and cities and townships. So you can see the cities outlined in that sort of pink color, and if you zoom in, you can kind of see the names and the general boundaries of the townships. Going back to the plans panel, most users are going to start with a blank slate and they'll want to create a new plan. There's some required fields when you create a new plan: a title, description is optional, and then picking a number of districts is required. Once you set these parameters, you click Save, and the tool will generate a plan. The plan as it is initiated has no blocks assigned to any districts. To begin that process, you want to click Checkout Plan for Editing. And you'll notice when you do that, this is what Dave referred to as some of the privacy measures. There's a note that comes up: while this plan is checked out, no other users will be able to edit, view, or export this plan. Naturally, the exceptions there are state and county admins, but other users wouldn't be able to. So that functions as sort of a security or privacy feature. You just click OK to that, and now the plan is open for editing. Again, on the plans panel on the left, right off the bat, you can see some of the validation measures, some of the information about the plan, who created it, who last modified it, and when it was last modified, who has it checked out. Some of these details and the plan name are visible to all users, even if the plan is checked out, but the district information down here and the editing capabilities would be locked out. So again, if you have a need for privacy for a particular plan, just check it out, and then only the person who has it checked out or county admins can view it. To begin adding blocks to districts, there's multiple methods for doing that, and I'll demonstrate that in just a second. Where we're at now, I'm zoomed into somewhere in the middle of Macomb County. There's conventional map features over here on the right-hand side, like zoom to home extent, zoom in or zoom out. So if you happen to get zoomed in too far and want to see the overview of the whole county, you can just click this handy home button, and it takes you to the overview of the whole county. Usually a good place to begin. And then you can open up a district and start adding blocks. So the two methods for adding blocks are either adding them by selecting from a list or by using the map tools. I'll demonstrate both, but I'll start by adding blocks from a list. So when you click on the list button, the modal opens up to add census blocks. You can specify your modification type. In this case, I'm going to only pick blocks that are currently unassigned. I'm going to choose the layer that I want to interact with. So one of the best ways that this modal works is with the cities and townships, because it lists them out here. You can see in their entirety the jurisdiction name and then the district that they're being added to. So I'm going to select a jurisdiction. Click Save. And when I do that, you'll see the map update down here at the bottom, and you get a confirmation message that the blocks that you selected, namely that jurisdiction that I selected, the city of St. Clair Shores, gets updated with the color of the district that you applied it to. And you can continue adding blocks in that manner for whatever district you like. I'm going to grab another city just to demonstrate that same functionality. and the city of Fraser. See the city of Fraser now updates to the same color, District 1. Again, over on the left-hand side on the plans panel, you'll see as you're adding these blocks, the population total and the percent deviance displays and updates in real time. Dave mentioned that in the production version of this tool, the live version that's now, the tolerance is set at 14%, or excuse me, it's 11.99% in the production version. This again being a demonstration tool, we had originally set it for 14%. What you'll notice as you continue to add blocks to a district, that number as it gets closer to the ideal population for the district, it'll change color once you're within that tolerance. In this case, 14%, but in the production to 11.99%, it'll go from red to black. So it's sort of a visual indicator that you've reached that measure of validation. I should mention too that the target population is simply calculated by the total county population divided by the number of districts that you choose. So if you have a total county population of 881,000 and you choose 10 districts, the ideal population is going to be roughly 88,000. The other method of assigning blocks to a district is to use the map tools. That's this button here. When you engage that button, the map options display at the top of the tool. Same sort of menu items. You can add unassigned blocks. There are other options. You can add unassigned and reassign blocks. Only reassign blocks that have a current assignment or remove blocks from a district. In this case, I'm going to continue to add unassigned blocks to my District 1. This time, instead of choosing to add entire jurisdictions, cities or townships, I'm going to choose individual census blocks. Now, there's a couple of different mechanisms to select the blocks. You can select one point, you can draw a line. A convenient is this rectangle tool. I'm going to use the rectangle tool and just sort of connect these two cities. So it's going to grab the blocks. You can see it only updates the blocks that were not currently assigned. And you can see when I did that, that additional section here updated the percentage, and now I'm within the tolerance for the test version, which was 14% to turn black. Some of the other features or compactness measures that Dave mentioned down here also update the Polsby, Popper, and Schwartzburg measures. As Dave mentioned, a score closer to 1 means a more compact district. So these are just guidelines to give feedback to the users who are adding blocks to districts. You can see that even though this district is within the tolerance, within 14%, and it passes that validation, and also validation that all the blocks are contiguous, meaning they don't touch each other, it has at least a fairly low Polsby Popper compactness score. This is not a showstopper. There's no validation that compactness be close to 1 or anywhere. There's no tolerance set for the compactness measure, but it will give you some feedback as to how compact it is compared to other districts. And to demonstrate that, I can continue adding blocks to another district. Now, I should mention before I do that, once you get a district to where you want it, you can lock the district. Again, because this has all the blocks contiguous and it's within the population tolerance, I lock the district. That will prevent these blocks that are currently assigned from either being added to or removed from this district. So it's a handy way to sort of preserve a district that you think you have where you want it. Moving on now to District 3, I'll just demonstrate how I can add blocks again via the cities and townships. I'll select Macomb Township, adds it to District 3, click Save, and then the map will update with that district color. Again, I'm going to go to the home extent to show where that is right there. You can see that it updates, looks like it's within the ideal population again, so it changes color from red to black. And then you can see how these compactness measures are much closer to 1 compared to District 1 that we just did. So these plan details and district details update as you're building your districts. Here's where the plan validation happens in real time. Again, every time I add or remove blocks from the district, it sort of runs through and does these checks. You can also trigger a validation by clicking the button here, and it'll perform the same validations and give you feedback on the left-hand side. Red X's for the validation measures mean you can't pass the plan. It won't be finalized until it satisfies these. If it's just a warning symbol with this exclamation point, those are just sort of notices like Dave mentioned. There could be reasons why a district isn't contiguous. For example, if you have an annexation, or probably a better example, a 425 agreement, it's possible that because of the way the census interprets those, the blocks might not be contiguous. So those are simply warnings that you can validate or finish off a plan, even if they aren't all contiguous. So some of that's up to local knowledge, and the people building the districts would have to have some knowledge as to whether or not there is a true problem with blocks not being contiguous, or if it's due to some explainable feature like a 425 or annexation agreement. As you're working on plans, Dave mentioned there are no versions of plans. You can't tag this as version 1 and have version 2, but what you can do, which sort of achieves the same effect, is to create a copy of the plan. So working on a plan, say you like where it's going so far, but you want to sort of put it on pause, or maybe you want to let people see what you're doing so far without actually affecting your real plan. You can click the copy plan feature, and it'll automatically generate a copy and load it into the plans panel. All copies have a default name that begin with copy of, so that's how you can distinguish them. Naturally, you can rename those plans, but that is the default name for copies. Copies come into the workspace not checked out. So just, again, be aware that if you are trying to make a copy of a plan that you don't want people to see, you would want to check it out right away. But then once you have it, you can check it out. You get the same notice that when a plan is checked out, no other users will be able to edit, view, or export it. And you can continue making edits to this plan. So that sort of serves as a versioning, if you like, where you've gone so far, but maybe you want to test out a couple of ideas by maybe adding other districts or other blocks, and continue working without it having been an official plan or a copy that you want to preserve. You can sort of achieve versioning by doing that. So that covers most of the basic functions. I'll also show, I should say briefly here, you can do the reverse. You can remove blocks using the same mechanisms, either the list modal or the map functions. So I just added a bunch of blocks to District 2. I can just as easily remove those blocks. I'm going to choose to remove them using the map tool. You'll notice that when you click the map tool option in the plans panel on the left, the map tool updates up here. So if I'm working with District 2 and I click this here, this number updates on the map tool. So I'm going to choose to remove blocks from District 2. I'm going to use the rectangle tool and just sort of grab a chunk here just to demonstrate. And you'll see that it removes blocks that were within the rectangle that I drew, at the same time updating the statistics. So those are, that's another feature that you can use. Once you've progressed along far enough on a plan and you want to run a report, you can do that. I'm going to go back to one of my other ones that I used earlier today just because I have more blocks assigned to demonstrate the reporting functions, which are accessible from the menu option over here on the right. Clicking that reports takes you to a report screen. And you have to, your county, the user's county, the user will have a county assigned and it'll already be preloaded. Me as a state user have most of the counties available to me, so I have to select the county, select the plan. You have an option to include or not include race demographics in reporting. I'll run both ways. I'll show it without, and then I'll rerun the report to show those race demographics included. But once you've selected your plan, you click Generate. Dave, can you see the report window?
I can't, Nicholas, now.
Okay, so yeah, the tool, I might be able to switch over. Maybe let me try doing that, Dave, just to show the, I'm gonna have to briefly pause the presentation and then pick a different window, so bear with me here. Can you see the report now, Dave?
Yes.
Okay, so this is generating the report without the race statistics, and you can see that it has the district descriptions, namely contents by block, right? So this here, this legal description, I'll show you how I did this. I did this in an earlier plan where there optionally you can type in a written description of your district. So this can be as simple as all of Macomb Township, or you can describe it, say, by streets or by town range section, or however you want to describe it, by parcel, by portions of school district or whatever. That's an optional field. The default district descriptions sort of listed by the largest granularity that you can. So if you've added entire townships to a district, those will list first. If it's a part of a jurisdiction, it'll list which part. In this case, for this particular plan, I have added portions of VTBs. Again, those are the census interpretations of precincts to from Shelby Charter Township to District 1. So it lists those out. That's a function of the plan. You can page through. Here's the population details. And I think I'm going to stop showing the plan here simply because, again, this is a development version and the mapping functions don't display that. If you were to continue through, paging through here, you would actually see the maps in the production version. Right now in this test version, they're not there, but that's where the maps would show up, and that's the report with the default report. I'll go back and I'll run that and I'll show it with including the race demographics. So back to the report window. This time I'm going to enable the race demographics, generate the report. Again, I'll have to toggle over to that report. Bear with me here. A lot of the same information, it's the same plan, but this time when I come to this page, you can see the breakdown of the statistics here by race. From this reports window, of course, you can print, save, or perform other functions typical for reports. So I'll go back to the tool here, go back to the plans. Any plan that you create, again, is going to show up in the plans panel on the left. And the other thing I wanted to show here, some of these conventional map tools on the right-hand side, you can either zoom in by using the plus button or or zoom out by using the minus button. Pretty standard. You can also do the same thing if you have a scroll wheel on your mouse. Scrolling up zooms in, scrolling backwards zooms out on the county view. And then you have an export button here. So when you click on that, there's export options. You can give a title and choose what kind of format you want the export to be. The default is PDF. You can also choose to have only the map portion be generated when you click export. Give it a quick title, click export, and it's kind of hard to see, but it lists the PDF down here. So again, if this were the production version, you would be able to click on that and save that out. So those are some of the most basic functions and most commonly used features of the map tool, the reapportionment tool. There are other features and functions. We tried to make the tool be pretty user-friendly. There is a quick start guide that covers a lot of these basic functions that I did email off to Michael so he can distribute that as necessary. But because we tried to make it pretty intuitive and user-friendly, the other functions should be fairly accessible to all users. If you do have any questions at any point, of course, David and myself are happy to answer, so feel free to call us. Is there anything that the committee wants to see specifically related to the map or the tool or the functioning, or any questions in general? I guess I'll open it up now for questions.
Commissioners, anybody have anything?
Tony, I do.
Mr. Lucido?
Thank you. I appreciate it, Dave and Nick. Very nice. It gave an overview. I noticed that this is copywritten from 2021 from the state of Michigan. Did the state of Michigan employ people to do these tools and design these tools?
Yes. So we have a Center for Shared Solutions. It's a department within the state that generally handles mapping functions, and they produce applications related to mapping. So we partnered with them to develop the technology and the tool. And I should mention too, possibly of interest to the committee, as Dave mentioned, the Census Bureau, somewhat in unusual fashion, this go around has released data in at two separate times. So there was the August 12th release. That data is exactly the same as what's going to come here on or before September 30th. It's just that it's unformatted. So, counties that have real hotshot IT guys who can pre-process that data theoretically could have gone out, downloaded the data from the Census Bureau on the 12th, and started putting it into their own proprietary systems, or like an ESRI mapping tool or whatever to do the redistricting. Most counties that don't have that technical expertise would typically have to wait until the September release update, which is the exact same data, just formatted differently. It's in a more user-friendly format. So what this tool does, one of the things this does is that our partners at CSS who created the tool actually took the raw data from the 12 and pre-processed it and put it in this tool for use. So again, when you zoom in and you see these census block totals, this geography is the 2020 geography linked up with the 2020 population totals from that August 12th release. So it's the same data, but it's been processed in a usable format. So we feel that's one of the strengths of the tool. And yes, it was state of Michigan users who developed the technology and the tool for use.
So Nick, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to monopolize the time. I want to just get to some answers so that I can call them directly and talk offline. So the tools were designed by a partner, a private organization, and collaborated with the state of Michigan Department, I guess, the state of Michigan's Department of Elections that did this to get to a program, if you will, to do all of these things that you're giving us today.
describe them as private.
Is
Center
CSS a
Care-
private organization?
No, it's a state organization.
Okay,
Correct. Yep, it's a
Thanks.
state.
all right.
Yeah.
It's part of the Department of Technology Management budget with the state of Michigan.
All right.
But Nicholas said, it's basically the enterprise GIS. It's you know, the GIS for the state of Michigan. So we're using their servers, you know, their resources and stuff to serve up the web application, you know, too.
Okay, just real briefly, Mr. Chairman, I want to get through these, and maybe one or two words will probably help me, and then I can go offline. How do we validate what this program does? What mechanisms do you have, or what do you have within the tools to do a check and balance of the, to validate so that we know that everything is correctly running and doing what it's supposed to do?
One way to validate would be to use a third-party or proprietary software that achieves the same sort of effect of reapportionment. So there's other tools, right? Esri has an extension. Esri is a mapping software company that has, at cost, an extension that you can purchase and group blocks by district and, you know, check against other measures of compactness and so forth and so on. So that would be one way of doing it. There's also free tools online, Dave's Redistricting, not to be confused with Dave Tarrant. This is literally the name of the tool online. It's called Dave's Redistricting. It's just another open source tool where you can do those things and sort of compare or contrast the results that you would get. I suppose that would be one way you could validate. I think you'd probably want to define your criteria for validation, right? Because the validation measures that are built into our tool are displayed on the tool, especially in the production version. Specifically, the tolerance being set at 14%. I guess if you're talking about how do you know that once this goes from, you know, 100% to within that tolerance, is that true? You could go back and you could look at the block population totals and literally count those all up, tally them up on a calculator, if that's what you mean by validation. So, you know, it just kind of depends on what you mean by validation. If you're talking about checking the actual coding and that it's all functional in the tool, I'd probably defer to Dave. I'm not sure how you would check that. It's not necessarily an open source tool where the coding's open for viewing, but, you know, like other state of Michigan applications, it was developed by the state for use for counties to do the apportionment.
For this purpose, right?
For this purpose, yeah.
Is there any, this is the last question, because I have a lot of them. The chairman has indicated we have a lot of questions, so we want to get right to it so we don't use the whole day. Is there any other states that are using this type of validation to do reapportionment?
There's no other state, as far as I'm aware, that CSS has developed a tool for. Naturally, other states have and do use either third-party or proprietary software to achieve their apportionment. I don't know what they are, but I'm pretty confident that they're not created by CSS. This was a sort of an in-house homegrown tool. David and I worked directly with the team at CSS to give them the user requirements, and so I'm not aware of any of this specific tool being used in other states, no.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know obviously what other states might have similar homegrown stuff. I know we shared this with a national group, the National States Geographic Information Council, NSGIC. I know we've shared our demo with them, and they were intrigued by this concept of, you know, states helping out local partners type thing. But to answer the question, I'm not aware of any other states that have created a homegrown application to help the counties, you know, do some type of, whether it's a county commissioner district apportionment or some other type of redistricting or something, you know, particular to that state. I'm not aware of that.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate
Thank you.
it.
We got a few other questions. Just along those same lines, could you supply us, the commission, with a list of outside companies that do this kind of work, that maybe somebody may wanna take the tools outside and work with another company?
We could, I know, Nicholas mentioned the shared solutions group who also kind of helped the older redistricting committee, with evaluation of stuff. So we could probably ask them for a list of
Okay.
external resources, which Nicholas mentioned, the Esri's one. I think Caliper has a product that also does similar stuff. We could
Yeah,
definitely
I mean, if you
issue a
can
list
just,
of other owners.
if you can just email us a list, and then we'll share with the commissioners and whoever might wanna use those. I know that Commissioner Bruley had a question.
Back in the area of security,
Mike.
in the area of security, does either the county administrator or the state administrator have the ability to look at these plans when they're being developed? Is there a way to block out the county administrator or the state administrator?
I think we could check on that. My understanding is if it gets checked out and it's something that, you know, it needed to get checked in by somebody else, that that's why the administrator kind of has that role, in that if the person loses their login or whatever, or, you know, can't get access to it, that somebody else would at least be able to kind of check that back in.
So what I'm hearing is that the state administrator and the county administrator always do have the ability to look at the data even while
That's
a
correct.
party is constructing it.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So there is no security. There's no 100% security here, number one. Secondly, do you do census track? Is there a form on here that just does census track? Or do you only go to the block level?
I believe it's just to the block level.
It is just to the block level. I believe there are tables that, you know, correlate census tract to block, you know, for that, but for the tool purposes, we did not, we just went down to the block level.
Well, census tract is above block. So,
Correct, yes.
so there is no way to do census tract.
No, not in the tool, no.
No, not in this tool, so.
So
yeah,
you only have the
yeah,
ability to go to the smaller level of block.
That's right, yeah, and if
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why you're interested in tracts. Block being a finer level of granularity, you can obviously achieve the same thing if you know where the tract boundaries are, but to the point of being able to group things on larger scales on the map layers, there are, again, other options like the old county commissioner districts or school districts, for example. So when you turn on those layers, you can see where the boundaries are for larger units and subsequently select those.
Does the program validate precinct lines?
What do you mean by validate?
Well, blocks are in precincts, tracts represent precincts. My understanding is in the past at least, the census has used the precincts to basically be tracts.
I'm not aware of that. So in my experience, most local election commissions draw their precinct boundaries based on something other than blocks or census data. I don't know how it is in Macomb County, but I'm the one that maintains all the address and district data and precinct data in the statewide qualified voter file, and I don't recollect many, if any, jurisdictions in the whole state that draw their precinct boundaries by census blocks or tracts for that matter.
I'm not saying that they do draw them using those things, but I'm just saying the census generally uses precincts as the boundaries for census tract.
No, the census uses VTD, so this is a point of distinction that causes us pain at the Bureau too, and I'm sure counties and locals too. So the VTD, the voter tabulation district, are the census interpretations of precincts. So what I mean by interpretations is that their block boundaries are drawn on whatever criteria the census wants, not necessarily by parcel line, not necessarily by precinct line, not even necessarily by tax units. So the census has its own mapped areas for school districts, precincts, cities and townships even. So while most of the time maybe they correlate to parcel lines or other units like jurisdiction boundaries, there are definitely variations simply because it's a different data set the census is using. So the VTD, or the voter tabulation districts, which are the census representation of precincts, are what are in here. But if you were to examine them closely throughout the county, you may very well find areas where those VTD boundaries don't exactly line up with what the local election commission described as their precinct boundaries. And again, that could be because maybe the local election commission is drawing it by roads or by parcel lines or by school districts according to their assessment system. So hopefully, and usually most of the time they do coincide, but I know for a fact there are variations across the state. I don't know about specifically in Macomb County, but I've run into plenty of situations in other places, other counties, where the census voter tabulation districts do not exactly match the local election commission definition of precinct boundaries. But again, all that being said, you can, using this tool, select blocks that are within BTDs, and then go back if you want to and add or remove blocks to a given district individually. So you can sort of shape, you can tailor and shape your county commissioner districts down to the level, the granularity of blocks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got a question here myself that Dave, earlier in your presentation, that is really going to be a big concern for this commission here is the census data has multiple releases, August 12th and September 30th. You're claiming September 30th is the day you're going by, although I was just at a Michigan County Clerks Association meeting, and they were saying that they got a legal opinion, and their legal opinion is the start date is August the 12th. Now that causes a problem because if you go 30 days off from that, that's September the 12th. 60 days after that, it's October the 12th, I'm guessing, which is going to put it in conflict with within the 30 days that you're able to submit a plan for September 30th. And so, are you planning on getting the Attorney General involved to get a legal opinion so we have some, we need some clarity in this, and the rest of the state does too.
Yeah, Jonathan and others in the department are aware of the conflict, you know what I mean, between the dates and stuff. So I know we've spoken with the AG. I think Jonathan could probably better address that question. All I'll tell you guys is that we are actively working to kind of get some more clarity on that issue.
So I guess as a commission here, we should be looking at getting something in before, I'm guessing October the 12th, be ready for it in the event that this, but I think the Attorney General really needs to put this on the front burner and get us an opinion that's going to hold. Right,
but again, nothing prevents you from, today getting, us the information we need, and we could get you access to the tool to start, if you chose to use the tool, to start using it, you know what I mean?
Of course, but when do we submit it? We cannot submit it before, according to you, before October the 12th, but according to this other opinion, it needs to be in before October the 12th. Otherwise, it's open to the public.
I think once you have it done, I don't believe anything prevents you from submitting it to, you're obliged to provide that final report to the Secretary of State. But, nothing, I don't see anything that would prevent you from whenever you get it done from filing that with us.
But doesn't the law say we cannot submit it before 30 days?
I can check with the.
Yeah, we can look at that, yeah.
I think it does.
Going back to the Bureau's position, which which is supported by the AG's office, is that the start date is going to be with the later September release of the census data. Again, slated to be on or before September 30th. So that is the Bureau's position, and we've been clear about that in multiple emails that Lori Bourbon has sent out. So that is our position. Naturally, anybody can challenge that in court if they want, but that's the Bureau's position.
Any other questions? All right, guys, appreciate you.
Michael, if I could just circle back real quick to that question about the 60-day window. The reason why we chose that later date was, our intent there was to give the counties as much time as we could to draw their districts with COVID and other things that caused the delay in the census data in the first place. We thought it would be advantageous, especially getting the tool out like we did yesterday on September 1st, to where you essentially have a couple weeks before the official data is even released to work on the district. So it just gives you that much more time. I'll admit, that as data guys, Dave and I are not privy to, what timelines the county was hoping to achieve with that, but that was the intent of going with the later date. The other thing that fed into our decision to go with that later date was that the Census Bureau itself has said that the unpolished data, the raw data that came out on August 12th, could in fact be somewhat of a disadvantage to the smaller counties that don't have the IT staff to pre-process it. So, again, that's not necessarily a legal opinion or binding or anything, but by the Census Bureau's own, admission, it could be a disadvantage because it is raw data. It's not in any usable format. Again, that's one of the advantages we feel of the tool, especially coming out on September 1st like it did, is that all that data has been pre-processed, ready to go in the tool should counties decide to use it. So, I hope it didn't, I know it caused confusion. That wasn't our intent, but hopefully, counties would have that extra time, especially if they do choose to use our tool to work on their plans. That was the intent.
So I did have one question to follow up on Mr. Bruley's comment about the security. Is it possible to have, let's just say 2 or 3 administrators so that they can keep control of their security within their own groups, perhaps one for the Democrat Party, one for the Republican Party, and maybe one for the county itself, so that they keep their own silo. Of course, it wouldn't be completely secure because the state still has that ability to see what you're doing. So I don't know if that's a possibility to at least bring it down to that level.
The answer is yes. Technically, the tool can support multiple, I don't know, but if it's more than 2, I know it can support at least 2 administrators. However, you would want to, I believe the committee would want to weigh that against the other technical difficulties that would bring into play, such as if you got 2 administrators, you might have one administrator who approves one plan while the other one denies it, or checks it out while another person, has it checked out. So you run into this.
The Macomb County has its own space. You can, like Nicholas said, have multiple administrators, but the pot can't be separated. All the plans are within the bucket of Macomb County in the system. So you can have multiple administrators, but you can't have an administrator over a certain bucket and another administrator over a different bucket. The bucket's the same for the entire county, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I appreciate that concern. If the committee, I think I understand the concern. If the committee wants to elaborate on that and have Michael shoot us an email, we'd be happy to look at it and consider other options. But one of the other goals of the tool, and one of the things we were sort of shooting for with the tool, was transparency. So transparency meaning that not everybody can see it and edit it, because there are certain limitations and security features that are built into the tool as we're presented. But transparency in the sense that some committees may not want that effect or illusion of siloing, because, it sort of gives the illusion of sort of backroom dealings and nobody knows what's going on. So, like I say, if the committee wants to shoot us emails to elaborate on what you were looking for there, we might be able to consider other options, but that is how the tool functions right now.
Fair enough. Anybody else have any other questions for Dave or Nick? Thank you, guys. Appreciate your your presentation. It was pretty thorough, and gives us a better idea. And I think now we're going to move on to the talking about the county administration designation. And Jeff Schroeder was going to, from planning, was going to maybe talk on that. Jeff?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
So as you're getting ready, you can already hear the concerns of the security of how this works. So, Dave or Jeff. So Jeff, you heard the concerns, so that's, obviously you're the holder of the key at this
Yes.
point, so there's concerns about that.
I hear and I understand the concerns. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Jeff Schrader. I am the Deputy Director with Planning and Economic Development. I am also been the GIS Coordinator and Data Services Administrator for the county for a long time. Been with the county almost 30 years, and this is my third time to this rodeo. So, and it's changed every time. So recognizing new technologies and a whole bunch of different stuff coming up. What I'd like to address today is at least what we have been able to do to pull the data that was dropped by the census on the 12th that the state was referring to. They're talking about this data drop that needs to be processed and everything. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to walk you through what we've done and what we've already distributed and provided to you. There was an email that went out last week that had a Windows zip file attached that had all of the pre-processed items that we had put together. I'd like to walk through those data to show you what's also available to you, which I think might help you guys decide what path you want to move forward in. Recognizing that, from a professional standpoint, I think the state's done an excellent job with their tool. But I understand the security concerns, and obviously with your ideas of transparency and that's not my concern to make, but that's for you guys to decide. But the tool is an excellent tool. My plan is, in a role that we would play traditionally with you guys, is as plans are submitted and come into your committee and your group, as you guys decide which plans you'd like to have validated, our department would normally validate those plans, looking at those population totals and everything. What we would do is we would just lean on this tool, because this tool already has a number of things built in. As you saw, the variance, different rules that are built into the tool set. But what I'd like to do today is walk through that Windows zip file that I sent you guys and show you what data's in there and what the logic of providing that data was, and to show you the different options that people have depending upon their varying levels of skill working with this data, how you should be able to leverage that data to put the plan together, either using those data or using the state tool. So with that, the data that I'm focusing on and talking about today is the data that dropped from that August 12th distribution from the census. As they had indicated, it's a legacy data. It comes down in a computer format that's very simplified, but you have to do a lot of extractions and processing. But the idea behind that is it's a basic set of data that can be put into just about any system, because you can export, modify, transform, and put it in any different computer package that you're looking at. So with this WinZip file that we sent out at your guys' request last week, the intent was to provide users with varying different skill levels the ability to access and leverage the Census Bureau's August 8th drop. So we did the processing that the state did, we did in-house with that data. What we've also done with that, in that release, is also what the state did is we have included the Census 2020's redistricting Tiger line files. Those are all the geography files that define the data. That's what we've been talking about earlier today with the census tracts, the block groups, the voting district tabulation files, and the blocks. So we pulled that information from the census and put it in this file as well. We've also provided some basic static maps built from that data in Adobe PDF format. So those maps will be, I'll show you what we have today, and we got hard copies on the back cart for members of the commission. And then we've also developed, although different from the state, an online tool that allows you to be able to go and explore this data by clicking on individual census geographies and be able to pull those 100% population counts. And with that idea in mind is, how does this group, if it is your directive that you have to provide this data to the public, what are ways that we get this data out to them? One way would be to just basically distribute this file in the same manner that it was given to you guys, where it can be put on a website, they could download this. But then there's also a link that'll be provided that if you decide to, that allow people to go to this mapping thing. They will not be able to generate plans, see plans, but be able to just explore the data and click around and just be able to see what was released in the census data. And as I demo that for you a little bit, I think it'll become a little more clear. So the first element that's on that release is the raw tabular data from the census. That came down from us for the state of Michigan in 4 separate files. We provided it in that file as Excel files that can be opened. And if someone wanted if someone wanted to go through the same process the state of Michigan did, or the same process the county did, they could start with these 4 files, extract the county, and start building up the same sets of data. So with this is the core data. We've included it in that download. What we've also done then is we've gone out, as I said, we've pulled the census geometry. So what we've done is we've been able to extract the data for the county and provide it in tabular data as an Excel file. And that Excel file exists for all of the different census geography summary levels. So we have county subdivisions. Those are our cities and our townships. The voting districts, the voting tabulation districts that the gentleman earlier were talking about. We have a table for tracts, we have a table for block groups, and then going down to the most finite one, there's a table that lists all the population information that was released down at that block level. So that's available as another way for people to access this data. We've also provided a folder in that file that contains all of the geography files from the census. These are what define the block groups, the blocks, the voting districts. And as an example directly, this map shows the track. So this shapefile is a very common format that can be used in many different mapping systems. I know in the past some people have employed outside resources that have been able to leverage these to help them build their plans. So we're including those map boundaries with this data release. With this map boundary release, we have also joined the data from the census. So if you were to open this up in a given mapping program and you opened up the Macomb County blocks, you could click on a block on the map and the corresponding population, race, and housing data is there with it as well. We've also distributed in here a copy of a shapefile. This is the geography file for the current existing Macomb County Board of Commissioners district. So someone wishing to be able to cook this their own and bring it together in a package and do their own analysis would have that resource of what the current districts are, and this overlays with those other census geometries that we provide. And then lastly, well, I shouldn't say lastly, but moving towards the end, as we're refining this and making this, so we started out with super user data at the very beginning, the very raw stuff from the census, and as I'm walking down this, we're refining the data, making it easier to use. This kind of gets us to the point where Okay, I don't have any computer available, what can I do? We have 3 PDF maps here that provide the county boundaries with the existing census, or I should say the existing Board of Commissioners district boundaries. And then there are 3 maps. One contains census voting districts, or the VTDs that they were talking about, county subdivisions at the census tract level, and then also the Board of Commissioners districts with the census tract level data. And as you can see, the maps are, they're electronic, so within a PDF format, anyone can take these to a Kinko's or someplace and get a large map printed out. We have large hard copies for you guys to take with you today. But with these maps, they are 22 by 34 in size. But each map for the basic census geometry that it has will display the census tract number, and then underneath it is the 100% population count. So that's the example where you're seeing the zoom in from the arrow here moving to District 4. Those 099242 numbers, those are, I believe, those are voting district numbers. They would also correspond back to the same values in the Excel spreadsheet tables. So you have them paper copied that way. And then we just provided the 100% count for the population within each of those tabulation areas. And then the final thing that we did, and this is probably the most refined data, this is we've created 2 Excel spreadsheets. One depicting census tracts in the county by the county subdivisions, and that's basically when we say subdivisions, we're talking about cities and we're talking about townships. So here you have basically all of this is a listing starting in Armada Township, all of the census tracts that make up Armada Township. We provide the 100% census count, and then also, as the state did, we're providing that race data, because some people are requesting that. And these are where people have reported one race alone. So we have a total for race, and then we have a total for each of the categories. The same data exists in the census voting districts by counties, the census tracts by county subdivision, or I'm sorry, the voting districts. We've done it in both ways. We have it broken down by community, by census tract, and we also have it broken down by community and then by the census voting districts. Recognizing that the state went down to the block level, which is the smallest, most granular item, it makes sense for the way they're tabulating it up, but as I know Commissioner Bruley had indicated, there was questions, could these be totaled at different levels, because for convenience, some of our communities in the north, it might make more sense to add up census tracts as opposed to adding multiple census blocks. So this is included with the distribution as well. Finally, what we've done to wrap this whole thing up is there is a PDF in the zip file that is the census's guide to the data when it dropped on the 12th. So the entire guide to how to use all this data, how to extract it, how to understand it, to understand what the tables and the table numbers mean are packaged with that as well. So that is available as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you, and now not as robust as what the state has put together, but what we were able to put together using all the data we extracted, the combination of the tabular data and the map elements, was to put together, excuse me, and this is internally within the county's GIS system running on the county servers, a reapportionment tool. This tool is not going to do plans, it's not going to validate, it's not going to aggregate and total automatically. I mean, that's the good stuff the state's providing. But what this provides, and I'll click through, this provides a basic viewer of all of these different levels. So when you click into this tool, what you find you're presented with basically a map of the county. Over on the left-hand side, you will see all the different types of county subdivisions that are, where how the data is broken out by the census geographically. We can start out by turning on the County Board of Commissioners districts. And then I could go in here and I could turn on all of the census tracts within the county, overlaying them on the districts. I'm just gonna pick an area here. I'm gonna zoom into this District 4, just to give you guys an example of how this works. So we're seeing District 4, County Board of Commissioners, I can toggle on and off. I can click on an individual census tract here, and I can see right here for this census tract, its population count is 4,371 persons living there. We have the information on race. We just have not added it to the tool at this point in time because we didn't know if that was something that you guys would want, if you would want to use the tool. But that's a further directive you can provide us. But what I did want to show, what the tool does allow you to do, which is similar to the state, is that you can, and we did not put this together rather quickly, don't have a guide out there, but we do have a selection tool here that allows to select multiples and do some totals. So if we are looking at what's currently active, Macomb County Census Tracts, I can click on select, I can click select, I can draw a box out, I can pull these four, it'll highlight these four elements in that district. And then if I go to these ellipse buttons over here, I can do statistics on it. And I can look at any one of the fields that are distributed with the census. There's many of them, and those are all of those numbers, those field numbers are defined in that census guide that we're including with the data zip file. But I can take a look at 100% population. And I can see that for these 3 districts that I have selected, the sum total value is 7,794 persons. Kind of gives a min and a max, gives some basic statistics, but this is a tool that you could use to do summations and then write on a piece of paper and start marking down the paper map. Every one of these sessions, if you were to go on this, it's independent. Is not retained. Once this is closed out, it's gone. But it gives an interactive method for exploring the census data that's there, doing some simple tabulations, and then kind of doing some more scenarios. So with that, I'll pop back to my presentation here. I'm going to open up the floor to questions.
Any of the commissioners have questions? Do you have the tool right now that the state gave? Did they give you
The state has released it. I signed in yesterday to get access to the tool, and there's still 2 more steps along the way. It was like, now that I'm there, I'm waiting for an email to confirm to get connection to the tool. So I have not been able to run the tool. And the question that did not get answered this morning from the gentleman at the state is, we know that the state's going to drop another release of data on the 30th. And as they're saying, it's going to be cleaned up, more easy use data. We don't know what that is. So the question is, I'm assuming, my assumption is, it will be similar to what I've just showed you. It'll be some types of tables, it'll be some type of Excel files, they'll do something. But we have not seen a clear indication of what that enhanced format's going to be over the just raw data that we picked up on the 12th.
So I think questions from the board, I think you're going to find here is, number one, how many other editors can be added? How many do we want to add? Do we want to limit it to the people here on the board? Do we want to open it up completely to the public? Those are questions, right? I mean, then the other question is, of course, the security issues that we've already heard. These are, I think this is going to be up to this board to determine how you want to do it. From my standpoint, I look at, and I talked to another commissioner about this also, that what's the problem if they're using this tool, that it makes your job a lot easier, and do we want to even put a limit? I don't know how many people would be interested in submitting a plan, but if all the validations are done, the work pretty much is done at that point. It's my assumption.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Thanks for your 30 years. I had asked the validation, there's a reason for it. If this whole plan that gets implemented with the software that was not proprietary, but copywritten, doesn't have a validation mechanism, how do we know that we're getting to the bottom of it, doing the right thing?
I understand. I guess.
So can I use your program to validate? Maybe if we use the program, and it might not be that sophisticated, but if I'm putting junk in both programs, it should be junk out the same to some extent. And if it doesn't, then we have to question what we're all doing here. So can we look to the county that took the time to do this, to utilize that as at least a buffer to know that we're doing the right thing, and it's validating what the state's program is before the lines or before the districts are put together?
In some instances, yes, what we can validate with our program, and we basically already have, is the validity of the data that came from the census. We know that the county population, I don't have the number in my head, we're at 800 and some thousand people.
Right.
So with every data set that we have extracted for the Macomb County out of that raw data dump, as I've extracted it at the community level, block group level, and all these different levels, we have gone through and done summation totals against all those to make sure we hit that population total. That's basically the best check that we can do, because we have no way of going out and validating, well, within the city of Warren in District 2, did the census get the right numbers for voting District 12? We'll never know that.
I know.
But we can do summation totals. What would be more of a challenge to validate at the state level without knowing what the algorithm that they used would be that the variance, number that they're talking about, 14%, 12%. If someone were to provide us with what the algorithm, what the function is, the mathematical formula, we could apply that to our data and essentially confirm that a plan that came in had this, scored the same or came up with the same values as the state program.
If that's possible, then could you get with Dave and Nick and ask them to give you that 14% variant? Because I would like that to be implemented to see if we're coming out with the same totals, so that the chair and the rest of the members of this commission have at least the security of knowing that what we're doing is consistent.
And I have not looked at what's driving that, but I believe it's going to be a simple calculation. It's going to be the total county population divided by the number of districts, but then there must be someone has set a number that you're not supposed to vary so much, plus or minus so many percent in a district.
So if we can get that, it'd be great. I've been asked by the commission, we can take a 5-minute recess, so if we can just reconvene at 10:31. Thanks. All right, that was a nice break. Jeff, I'm not sure if is there any other questions? I think that the key to me is to get these other tools so people feel comfortable. The only one that's ever gone through this is Mr. Bruley here. He's the old pro, so he had a bunch of questions, and I'm not sure that we got all the answers, but I think the more tools we have, the better the plan. I really, from my standpoint, the question is, when do we want to reconvene again, and when do we want to have plans submitted so that it gives you the time to review them and for us to be able to review them and make a decision. So I'm kind of opening that up to the board. I'm not sure what the right answer is, because we don't even know from the state. Our legal counsel was here. Has he got an opinion? Frank?
He's always happy.
Have you looked at this question at all, Frank, as far as when we should get these in?
Yes, I have, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to sound like a lawyer. But the statute and our charter, to be quite honest, a court could find this as somewhat ambiguous, which could lead to different results, the way the statute's written. What I'm trying to say kindly is it's not written very well. And what it says is the statute first, in the first section of the statute, I think the first sentence says that the plan must be submitted within 60 days. That's all, that's the first sentence of the statute. Then later on, the statute talks about, there's a second section, which is section 7 of the statute, MCL 46.407. That talks about what happens if you don't meet the 60-day deadline. And in that statute, they throw in, well, if the Apportionment Commission has failed to submit a plan within 60 days, but not less than 30. So in other words, it's kind of like an afterthought about this, but not less than 30. It's in the wrong spot. It should be in the first sentence. The first sentence of the statute should say, this commission shall submit a plan within 60 days, not less than 30. And that solves it, because you're talking about the deadline for the plan. And so what the legislature did is they threw this in as an afterthought in the section, which creates some issues. What do they mean by that? So, but then it refers to the latest official plan. That's starts the 60-day deadline. So then the question becomes, what is the latest official plan? They're kind of assuming that there's going to be one plan from the census, and right now we're getting multiple. And so when you say the Clerks Association attorney said, well, you could argue that the latest official plan was the August 12th plan, because we're on September 2nd today, and the latest plan was August 12th. Well, what's going to happen October 1st? The latest official plan will be September 30th plan, or the September 30th numbers. I should say numbers, not plan. So I think my opinion is, I agree with, I saw that email issued by the state. Their opinion is that the September 30th is the official number. And the way I look at that is what we've been given is preliminary numbers that haven't been formatted. And the official number will be formatted. The official will have that's their final complete answer. In other words, they're saying, this is what we're working on now. This is a draft of what we have. This is the raw data. And so the way I look at that is a court would probably say, well, that's really not the official plan. That's not really the official numbers. The official numbers are the ones that are going to be your final numbers that are formatted. So that's the way I look at it. I kind of agree with the state. So I can see why an attorney would say, well, the latest numbers are those, but I would argue that maybe those aren't official because they're not in the final format. And that would be the official numbers. So that's why I apologize for talking like a lawyer, but those are the qualifications, and that's my opinion.
All right, and of course, there's another attorney's opinion from the Clerks Association that it's the 12th, so I can find, I'll tell you what.
So to your point, Mr. Chairman, what is the next date we should convene? I believe that our convening would only be moot if we don't have the official numbers, because all we're doing is waiting on official numbers to commit to a plan.
And I'm hoping the Attorney General comes up with a plan or a date, and that would probably clarify it. Am I right?
Yeah, one thing is you can request an Attorney General opinion. You're a county clerk. The county prosecutor can request an Attorney General opinion on this issue. Since you're the chair of this apportionment committee, you could send a formal request for an opinion to the Attorney General if you so wish.
And as directed by the board?
You can do it on your own, but I think directed by the board would add more weight to it.
Mr. Chairman, we would need to, I think for cover, if we're going to go to the script is not written properly because the legislature has miscalculated its mark. Therefore, I'd like to have an Attorney General opinion for cover at a minimum for this apportionment committee.
Would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
I'll make that in the form of a motion. I so move at this time, Mr. Chairman, to seek and obtain an Attorney General opinion based on the fact that there is some confusion on the timelines, and ask the Attorney General to clear it up for us, and that motion incorporates all members of the board, just not the clerk and the prosecutor.
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Rocca. Any discussion on this? Mr.
I
Rowland?
would generally support the motion. My question is this,
Yeah, you hit the mic.
I would support the motion. My question though is this. So if we have the 60-day period, and let's say we start the 60-day period in August, as suggested is a conservative viewpoint, what date would that mean that we should have plans in by?
No, well, and that's a good question, because it's gonna be no earlier than 30 days, which would be September the 12th, but no later than 60 days, which I'm.
So
let's just
we
assume it's
would
October
have
12th.
that figured out, so that we would know what that calendar is, in case we need to do that, and what would be the penalty for not having submitted a plan by whatever that date becomes? What would be our penalty?
Well, there technically is no penalty for these deadlines, failing to meet them. What the consequence of it is that when you fail to meet the 60-day deadline, the public is allowed to submit a plan.
Right, well, that's what, so the penalty for not meeting that date is the submission of public plans that we have to deal with. So the question then becomes, we should play a conservative calendar to see what the date is for August to which we should have submitted a plan by. We can have that decided by your staff so we know it, and then we can maybe work internally on that clock so that if the Attorney General does or does not give us the remedy we're asking for, we could still possibly meet that deadline unless we're not worried about having the submission of many public plans to us, with the concern being, I think the tools that are out available in the public right now would encourage submission. This process is becoming somewhat clearer and easier from a public perspective. So we may want to meet that deadline if we don't get a remedy from the Attorney General suggesting that we have a further timeline. So we'd sort of be working with two ideas at the same time, that we could possibly, thanks to Jeff, or get our material and get going, but that we would wait and meet when we get a response from the result of this motion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and it would made me think about what are we gonna accept as far as plans during this 30 days? I mean, how wide open are we gonna open this tool? And then how do we let these plans, if we wanna be open in this process and not be troublesome to the planning commission, my thought on this is that anyone can come through, any one of us, to present a plan before that 60-day.
Mr.
You know what I'm saying?
As you will determine.
Mr. Chairman, my motion was specific as to seeking an Attorney General opinion. It had nothing to do with the timelines and everything else. If there's another motion that Mr. Brewley wishes to offer.
No, I just want to put that in discussion.
Oh, okay.
As consideration of your motion, which I would support, but I just think we should have the discussion of what that could involve later on.
And I too believe that it's in the best interest of this commission to do what's right, and that is to meet the deadlines so that we're not derelict in our liability and responsibility, but at the same time seek the opinion, so that we're moving on the same track. And I think we both have an agreement, but the motion is to seek the Attorney General's opinion with the consensus that it's just not coming from the clerk's office and the prosecutor's office, but in fact all commission members, and to do this expeditiously based on the fact that we are unclear as the council has led us down that path, unclear as to what we're supposed to use and what is the actual use of those time deadlines. So at this time, I'd like to have a roll call vote if we could, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any other discussion before we go there? Hearing none, could the deputy clerk please repeat the motion and take the roll?
I'm gonna restate.
Yes, please.
To have a formal legal opinion from our state attorney general as it relates to all members of this board, and not just from the clerk and the prosecutor who may seek that opinion, but all members stand united as to go forth and get a legal opinion, so we have some basis in the legal system to hang our hats on.
Deputy clerk, please take the roll.
Anthony Borlini, Macomb County Clerk.
Yes.
Larry Rocco, Macomb County Treasurer.
Yes.
Peter Lucido, Macomb County Prosecutor.
Yes.
Ed Bruley, Macomb County Democratic Party Chair.
Yes.
Mark Gordon, Macomb County Republican Party Chair.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So just to further the discussion, because we do need to determine is, are we gonna allow each of the commissioners to be editors to the software that Jeff Dorowski has got?
Mr. Chairman, before we move forward, I know that the clerk has taken the role and everything. I would also indicate that because our legal counsel had made a statement that legal opinion that we intend to seek be written by legal counsel as to what we need to frame that issue that we talked about, so that we all could sign on and send the same.
So you want me to draft a question to the?
Yes.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was gonna ask that of a minute ago. So we just need to agree as far as editors that we're gonna allow on this plan. Is it gonna be limited to the commissioners here? Are we gonna open it even further? Or do we want people on the outside to just use other tools to submit a plan after or to us? So I'm thinking if people on the outside wanted to give, for instance, Ed, if you got a group that is interested in submitting it, they might submit it through you, or even on the other end of it, Mark Horton on the Republican side, that they should probably deal, or any one of us, to submit a plan before the 60-day. That way it's kind of open for ideas, and it might help in the development of the plan. Mr. Horton?
A question, if I may. I understand that almost anybody can put in a plan, right? I just want to make that clear, I think.
Well,
any
it's gonna be up
citizen-
to us, right? So there's gonna be submission of plans. It's open to the public after 60 days if we can't come up with an idea,
Okay.
plan. But whether it's 30 days or whatnot,
Yeah, okay,
I guess.
thank you.
My question, that is the question I give to the board here, is if you wanna, my thought would be to limit the editors for the county's perspective for us, and then if people wanna come through us, they can submit a plan through us within the 30 to 60 days. Mr. Willie?
I think I understand what you're saying, but before the 60 days, it is up to any commission member who wishes to submit a plan to bring it forth. People could give us one that we would then bring as a motion, but that's it. After the 60 days, then we're required to have the public be able to submit, so that's a different process. But when you're talking about editors, I would be, I think, in concurrence with your opinion, since this tool was decided through public means, that people should have the ability to have what the planning commission, because it's public information now, have developed. So I don't see any harm to allowing someone from the public, because it's out there and you have it and it's already developed. It would be like any other piece of public information, and that should be made available to the public, I would think.
Yeah, and Mr. Willie, I don't disagree. The only question I would have is there a limit to how many editors can be on your plan, do you know?
Just for a point of clarification, when we're talking about the two tools, the state's tool, they have assigned editors, and that is just for you. That is just for the reapportionment or redistricting commission. And Michael's created those accounts, so I believe that I'm on there, and I believe every member of this can go to the state's plan and
So that is limited, that state plan is limited to just this
Yes,
many accounts?
yes, that they're not opening that up to the general public, because you have to have a Michigan login. So what our alternative, and why I put the piece together with the mapping piece that I showed you, would be something that we, or you as the committee, could put out there for the public, if the public wants to have a means of exploring those data. And that's unlimited, like I said, that doesn't store a plan, that does not even require a login, that's just browsing census data at that point.
It's really, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would just move that we make that information available, because there's no editing, there's no anything, it's just information.
You're talking about the counties,
Right.
yeah, I think that is already available, correct? I mean,
Technically it is, I mean, it's out there. I mean, anybody, we haven't distributed that address for it yet, but it's publicly open.
So, Ed, did you wanna make a motion along those
So
lines?
I'll move to make it available.
The county information available and the editing, responsibilities will be just on the state plan within our group. Is that what you're saying?
Per the state regulations.
Yep, sorry. Just to clarify, we can do that. There are no editors set up on the state's plan right now, but if the Apportionment Commission wishes to have everybody set up as an editor, we can do that.
And I would
To be
put
available.
part of the motion, that the five of us be editors on the state plan.
Can I have a discussionary point on that, Mr. Chairman? Second. The discussionary point is, what is the intended purpose of making everyone editors? Are we all gonna put our own plans together being editors?
I don't plan to put any plan myself, but.
So that being said, what the purpose of the motion is to put editors down for what purpose?
Well, I think, let me just try to answer, is we all have equal access, and that's what we decided before. If somebody asks a question through the chair, all that information is provided equally to all of us. So that's probably along those same lines.
Convenience, pretty much.
Just so you're not limited, or left out.
And it allows us that we may wanna use it, but we don't have to use it. But it's another tool that's available if we choose to.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Deputy Clerk, want to take the roll?
Yes, sir. Anthony Borlini, Macomb County Clerk.
Yes.
Larry Roth, Macomb County Treasurer.
Yes.
Peter Lucido, Macomb County Prosecutor.
Yes.
Ed Burley, Macomb County Democratic Party Chair.
Yes.
Mark Horton, Macomb County Republican Party Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. I think the other piece of housekeeping is as far as when do we want to meet again and what would be appropriate to come up with the timelines. And I'm not sure that we have that information without the state giving us that. I mean, it makes sense to me that we would try to have plans submitted by a certain date and for us to decide on that plan, I don't know, a week or two after that. Does that make sense? Now, the date, I don't know what the date would be, though.
Will you, figure out what the timeline would be if, say, the Attorney General rules by the 12th, so we would have knowledge of how we stay in the 60 days?
I would, at this point, assume the 12th, to work toward that date. And if we got an extension to get our homework done, we got an extension, and hopefully this, I would think, we got an attorney's opinion, or whatever that was worth, within a day from, as the Clerks Association. And it was the 12th in that opinion. Okay. So, that being the case, I think that we have some timelines that we have to, that are coming up fairly quick. And, do we want to convene based on the, Attorney General's opinion, hoping she gets it to us quickly, or do we want to just set up a date based on the 12th?
I would move that we meet based on the timeline you're going to give us for the 60 days. And until we know that's different, we should try to follow that timeline.
I don't disagree. So, do we want to give a date then, a week after the 30 days to reconvene? meaning the 12th, would be September the 12th, and sometime a week or so after that, based on schedules, we meet a week after that, and we have plans that Jeff Dorowski gives to us. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. And if that's the case, if the planning commission brings it to us back,
Well, we would have to submit them first. It would have to be our
Do we submit it
submittal
to the
to
board?
him in order to validate
is this submitted through the board, or is it just
it
submitted?
through this commission.
All right. So we'll come up with a date sometime after the September the 12th, within a week or two of that date, to submit the plans to you.
Before we move, I appreciate that, yes, I think that the sooner the better, so that we don't lapse any time periods, but from the attorney standpoint, do we also have to CC or communicate also with the Secretary of State as it relates to, because as the clerk, as well as the Secretary of State running the elections for the state, would it be prudent to also put that office on notice? That we're asking for that legal opinion, given the nature and circumstances of the confusion that's caused here at this commission today?
Yes.
Thank you. So I would also respectfully ask that our consensus now from the motion that's been approved also go to the Secretary of State, so that if she has to opine to anything the Attorney General is doing in conflict with her office, that we would have safe harbor.
And I think Heather Mind, yes, was the last Attorney General that was in charge of the opinions, but I'm not sure, but we can.
We can't hear you. Move up to the mic.
I was just saying, I think Heather Mind-Guest is the AG that's kind of like oversees the opinions, so I don't know if she still is, but.
Is there somebody with the Bureau of Elections at the state level, and I'm not familiar in the legal department, that would also get a copy of this so that they could also at least confer with the Attorney General on what we're asking?
I believe there is, we can just.
Yeah, and I spoke with him yesterday, and they're just as confused as anybody, and they are also looking at the Attorney General for an opinion, so.
Yeah, so this will support, I think that the Secretary of State, the Elections Division is on the same page that you are.
Thank you. All right, that clears that up, that we've got at least covered.
Yeah, they're on the same page that they're confused.
Well, they're concerned about this issue and they'd like to see it resolved.
Right. Any other discussion, Mr. Fortin?
For our council, your presentation, in my opinion, was very clear, and it seems to me that September 30th, I'm sorry, is a date certain. It's a date certain where we will have final material. Now, since we only have 60 days, and we're not positive from what date, would you expect a quick response under the circumstances from, you would not?
There's no way of knowing what you'll get. And sometimes the Attorney General will issue an informal letter instead of an opinion, which we treat basically as an AG opinion, but it'll be just a quick response saying that based on our review, we would recommend that you do this.
But certainly the Attorney General understands that there's a short time frame here.
Yes.
Thank you.
The Attorney General and the Secretary of State both are attorneys very familiar with election law.
Thank you, sir.
So, I just want to make sure we get a second. Do we have a second on your motion? Mr. Fortin did, yes, okay. I just want to make sure. I'm sorry.
So,
Shirley?
August 12th is the date that we're sort of starting with, so that would make September 12th the 30 days, and then that would make October the 60 days. So as long as we do it before those 60 days, which would mean beginning of October, somewhere in there, we're okay. So we have a little bit of time here, so I'm just thinking that's when we should be ready with plans, beginning of October, basically. Am I wrong in that thinking?
I would concur with that, and then if we have more time, we have more time, but I think we need to.
But that would give us at least a goal, then.
So
So we
that
have
would be-
some time here.
the guidelines would be mid-September to have our next meeting to submit the plans, beginning of October to get together to make a decision. And would that be just a meeting to make a decision, or a meeting to get your information back? Or are you just gonna get us all that back in the meantime?
I think that you as a committee, plans are gonna, depends on who submits a plan. You guys will have to decide which plans you send to us to validate. We will do the validation and we'll send a report back to you. And from that report, you guys can, make a decision if you're gonna accept one of those plans, or if you're gonna let that, I guess, go on to the.
But we're gonna submit the plans to you. Are you gonna get back with us to say, these 5 plans are within compliance?
Yes.
And then individually, we look at them, and then we come together as a group and make a decision in early October? Right. Okay.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Deputy I'm sorry.
Just a point of clarity, in terms of.
As far as your last name, Mr. Shorter?
Oh, Schroeder, yeah, Schroeder, no worries. Just a point of clarity on the data distribution. As I talked about this Windows file that we've created and we've provided to all of you, the question I think that remains unanswered here is that, do you intend to make that available, that data available to the public? Because we talked about making the website and the map available, but if you are looking for that data dump that we process and making it available to the general public, I think you guys need to make a decision on that. And then who would host that and how that would be disseminated.
I think the assumption by this group, I think, is that you would host this information, and all that information that's public information would be available to them. Am I correct?
Well, we've created the file, but the question is, do you wish to host that file on the clerk's website where there's a public notice that's available to get? We have not stood up a web page or anything to communicate any information to the public. That's not our role. We just compiled this data for you.
Okay.
So the question
So,
is,
yes,
do you want to have a
I
mechanism?
think we can do that through the clerk's website. We can develop something. I believe there's something in the works right now to help with this. Am I right, Mike?
Yes, we are putting together a website, and if it's the commission's desire, we can put that data file on the website for public download.
Well, I think we've already decided that we're gonna put all the public information on this, and it'll be available to the public.
Thank you for that point of clarification.
All right, any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, would you restate the motion?
I'm gonna ask, does Deputy Clerk have that motion? No. Ed, can you restate the motion?
Yeah, I would move that we make available to the public through the clerk's website the information from the Planning Commission that they have available now, and when the state releases further information, that the further updating be made available.
Okay, clerk, please take the roll.
Anthony Forlini, Macomb County Clerk.
Yes.
Larry Rockham, Macomb County Treasurer.
Yes.
Peter Lucido, Macomb County Prosecutor.
Yes.
Ed Bruley, Macomb County Democratic Party Chair.
Yes.
And Mark Fortin, Macomb County Republican Party Chair.
Yes. Do we have any other thoughts on all this? Are we good with this? Okay. Did that motion include the editors? I thought that was the original. We took that already? Okay. Yep. Any unfinished business? No unfinished business? Anybody have any new business? Hearing none, we'll move to public participation. Members of the public may speak for 3 minutes. If you'd like to come up to the podium, state your name. Seeing none, that's the last item. I am looking for a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lucido, supported by Mr. Rocca. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Ayes have it. We're adjourned at 11:03. Thank you.